We have in us both saint and a sinner. We are in between Krishna and Maya, right? So Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna is in the heart of all living entities, in our heart also, but also who is in the heart? Maya. She's also there. So she's always making propaganda, canvassing. Her job is to make sure that no unqualified people bother Krishna. So she's a pure devotee of Krishna, and she's testing us constantly just to make sure that we actually want to serve Krishna sincerely at the bottom of our heart, as people say, and then we will not just bother Krishna with our own agenda. So that's her job. So people say that okay, there's different variation of this, but normal, ordinary people, they learn by their own mistakes. And intelligent people, they learn by mistakes of others, by studying other people, and they learn, we're supposed to learn by both successes and mistakes of people. If you're intelligent, you don't have to make the mistake in order to learn. That's not a good scenario for you. So either we will have to go through the process ourselves and learn, or we just observe people and learn from them. And those who don't have intelligence, they don't learn even from their own mistakes. They keep, sometimes we keep making the same mistake again and again. And there is another saying that the mother-in-law teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching her own daughter. By correcting her own daughter in the presence of the daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law teaches her daughter-in-law. Because, polite people, when they are civilized, they will not scold a person directly. They will just say what they want to say, but they will say kind of in indirect way. So by hearing, the daughter-in-law is supposed to learn what she should not do or what she should do. If she's intelligent, she'll get the point. If not, then I guess the mother-in-law will have to tell her directly. So something similar happens with Krishna and us and the great devotees. By teaching and correcting personally the great devotees, the great personalities, Krishna is teaching us lessons. And all these lessons are recorded in Shastra. Sometimes Krishna puts his devotees in illusion deliberately so that we can learn, can observe how they get in Maya, what is the mechanism or the sequence of wrong decisions that they make, so that we avoid these decisions in future. And because Krishna likes drama, and this is the best way to learn. Nobody watches movies if the movie is boring. So also, we don't like to read stories if the stories are just ordinary stories. And therefore Krishna likes to put his devotees, the greatest amongst them, in very dramatic situations, so that our attention is caught. And also, so that we cannot say, oh, my situation is special. My situation is much worse than, for example, the situation of Arjuna on the battlefield, or the situation of Prahlad Maharaj, who was tortured by his own father, etc. Therefore, for our own benefit, the stories in Bhagavatam are usually very dramatic, very absorbing when we read them. And it's not only Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, Ramayana, all this. So we're gonna look now at mainly two stories from Bhagavatam. And there in these stories we will see... Welcome, Haribo. Okay, the topic is the downfall of a saint and the redemption of a sinner. So we're going to speak about two main stories from Bhagavatam. But the whole purpose of this exercise is to learn from these stories how people get in trouble. That means how to avoid this, and how people get over these problems in life. Because this is what Krishna does. He puts his devotees in different situations so that we, ordinary people, we can learn. And the first story is the story of Bharata Maharaj from 5th canto of Bhagavatam. So, who is familiar with this story? Okay, that's the best. Sometimes.
Is that the sage that turns to a deer?
Yes. Okay. All right. Exactly. But that's good that, in a sense, it's good that you're not so familiar, because sometimes devotees, when they know the story, they shut them down. They just, okay, I know this. I know, I heard this many times. So they don't listen so carefully. And then the second story is the story of Ajamila from 6th canto. So in both stories, we'll see, we'll observe, we'll analyze, and I hope we'll learn from the downfall. In both stories, there will be falling down and then redemption. So in both stories, there is happy end. And Srila Prabhupada, in his commentaries, he makes a strong point that we should learn from these stories. All right, so the first story begins with the emperor of the whole world, Bharata Maharaj, who had unrivaled kingdom. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you know, maybe you have heard, maybe you don't, but haven't heard. But in the Upanishads, there is a description of what is one unit of happiness. Okay, everybody strives for happiness, so what is one unit of happiness? Like 1 kg, or no, here you guys use other terms, 1 pound. What is 1 pound of happiness? So it is, if you're king, you're the king of the unrivaled kingdom. You don't have any problems in the kingdom. There is no violent opposition against you. There are no people who hate you and they want to dethrone you. Citizens, subjects are happy, and there are no neighbor kings who are inimical. And you just perform your duty perfectly, and everybody's happy with you. Your family, the ministers, they're all faithful and loyal to you. This is one unit of happiness. So we can imagine what kind of units of happiness we're dealing with. We are striving for maybe 1,000 of this, and it's hard to attain. But 100 times more happiness are enjoying the residents of the higher planetary systems and the heavenly planets. And 100 times more happiness than them is enjoyed by the primeval demigods, Indra, Varuna, etc. And then 100 times more happiness is enjoyed by the gurus, the spiritual teachers of the demigods, the great sages, like Brihaspati. He's the spiritual master of the demigods. And 100 times more happiness is the happiness that is enjoyed by the Prajapatis. These are great living entities who live above even heaven, and their job is to populate the universe in the beginning. When the universe is empty, there are no living entities, so they have to give bodies to all these living entities who want to take birth. And then 100 times more is the happiness enjoyed by the great sages who live on Tapaloka, Janaloka. And then 100 times more is the happiness enjoyed by Brahma, who lives on the highest planet, Satyaloka. And then the happiness of Brahma is compared to, what was that? Not even very insignificant drop of water compared to the whole ocean of the happiness of Brahmananda. Brahmananda means to realize that we are not the body, we are the spirit soul inside the body. And this happiness of Brahmananda is a drop of a part of 100 part of a drop of water compared to the the limited ocean of bhakti rasa, the happiness from pure devotional service. So here Bharata Maharaj was enjoying happiness, we can say 1 unit of happiness, but he was actually a great devotee. And because he was a great devotee, he developed such strong taste for Krishna consciousness, for direct devotional service, that he left his kingdom, he left his beautiful, obedient wife and his children, his friends, his ministers, his wealth. He left all of this at the young age, not when people usually do this when they're old. And this is also good, but we see nowadays that even when people are old, they don't leave their political career. In this country, we have quite many examples. People would not do that. But anyway, Bharata Maharaj left this kingdom because he wanted to concentrate on direct devotional service, and then he went to the forest. And then in the forest, he lived in ashram alone, and he was following very strictly sadhana. He was worshipping the Lord every day, constantly, with constant meditation, and he became so advanced that he reached the level of bhava. Bhava is just the beginning stage of prema, of pure love of Krishna. So he was experiencing all these ecstatic symptoms, like tears were coming out of his eyes, and then he was in ecstasy, and so much so that he was so advanced that when these ecstatic symptoms they would appear, he would try to shun them. He would try to suppress them because they were interfering with his service. Let's say he was worshipping the deity, Shalagram, and then when these ecstatic symptoms appear, you cannot see properly around you because tears, etc. Your voice chokes up, etc. So usually when these symptoms appear in ordinary devotees, we are very happy. That means we are advancing, but he was not happy. He was like, this is interfering with my service to the Lord. Okay, so then what happened? It seems that he was completely successful. Then what happened? One day, he saw next to his ashram there was a river, and then he saw how a deer, a pregnant deer, jumped in the river because she was very afraid, scared by the roaring of some predator, like a lion or tiger. And then she was so disturbed that she jumped in the river. She tried to swim across, but then she, out of this great fear that she felt, she had miscarriage. Not miscarriage, but she delivered prematurely the small deer, the young deer, and then she died. Then Bharata Maharaj saw this, and he saw this helpless, small, little, cute deer, and he decided that he would save this small animal, and then he will take care of him, I guess. And he started to feed this deer, to take care of it, to even at the cost of his spiritual sadhana. So this is the beginning of our downfall of a saint. Maya sometimes tricks advanced devotees by compassion. Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, explaining the compassion Arjuna felt for the soldiers from both armies. He explains that this was a misplaced compassion, and he compares it to the compassion that we may feel to the dress of a drowning man. So instead of saving the drowning man, we save his dress. So this is the body. So in similar way, Maharaja Bharata developed compassion, which was material compassion, and he started to take care to take care of this animal at the cost of his spiritual practice. That means he, in few days, which is amazing thing, and this is somebody who is very high in the devotional service. So let alone somebody like us who is in the beginning. For very few days, he completely neglected his spiritual practice because he was always thinking about this deer. Became so attached. How did he become attached? Bhagavatam describes by eating with him, by laying down, taking rest with him, by walking around with him. All these things, they produce attachment in the heart. So they're binding the heart in a very hard knot to the material object that we attach to. So this is how it happens. And here we have some nice quotes from Srila Prabhupada. We should be compassionate by raising one from the material platform to the spiritual platform. Otherwise, at any moment, our spiritual advancement may be spoiled, and we may fall down into the material platform. Maharaja's Bharata compassion for the deer was the beginning of his fall down into the material world. And why was this fall down? What is wrong, somebody might say? What is wrong of having compassion for this helpless creature and trying to help him? Srila Prabhupada explains, if one is actually sympathetic to fallen, suffering humanity, he should try to elevate people from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness. As far as the deer was concerned, Bharata Maharaj became very sympathetic, but he forgot that it was impossible for him to elevate a deer to spiritual consciousness, because after all, a deer is but an animal. So here's the catch. How do we help somebody? Of course, we're not against helping the body of people. We also have our Fruitful Life programs, and the devotees also try to alleviate people's suffering by providing them shelter and food or whatever is appropriate. But we know that this is not the real solution of anyone's problem. Why? Because this is a very temporary solution. What is the reason of suffering? The reason for suffering ultimately is the ignorance. Ignorance means that we are not aware of our connection with God, and because of this we have many sinful desires, and when we act on them, we commit sinful activities, and then the result of these sinful activities is suffering, sinful reaction. So this is the real cause of suffering. How do you fight with this? The only way, as Srila Prabhupada explains, is by elevating the consciousness to the level of Krishna consciousness. And this is done by sharing Krishna consciousness with others. In this way, people become aware of their real position. They remove their own ignorance from their heart by the mercy of Krishna. And then they cease with sinful activities, and then there is no suffering. When there is no sin, there is no suffering. On the contrary, they start to perform pious activities, devotional service, which brings happiness, satisfaction, bliss. The first characteristic of bhakti is that it's called kleshagni. Kleshagni means it destroys all suffering at the very beginning. And subhada means it gives all auspiciousness. So this is the only way we can help anyone. And in this case, Bharata Maharaj forgot that this is an animal, and animals, they cannot actually perform steadily devotional service. They may perform some devotional service unknowingly if you give a dog some piece of prasadam. This is devotional service, but he's not aware that he's doing it. And therefore he cannot be steady in this. He will eat prasadam, and next moment he'll catch some smell and he will go somewhere and eat something else or do something nonsense. So in this sense, Bharata Maharaja's compassion was sentimental and material. And another thing, we cannot help others if we give up our own Krishna consciousness, because this is the remedy for us and for everybody else. If we sacrifice our own Krishna consciousness, like Bharata Maharaj did, he compromised his sadhana, his spiritual practice, because he wanted to take care of this small deer, then what we actually do is that we doom ourselves and also this entity that we try to take care of. Because we can only help anyone if we are in Krishna consciousness. If we're not, we don't really help anyone, including ourselves. It's something like, imagine a physician, a doctor, he has the cure that can actually heal the patient, but he decides that, well, it's too heavy, it's too bitter, so I'll throw this away and I'll just give him some sweet words. This will be the remedy. I'll just try to console him. So that's what happened, actually. Another very fascinating and shocking even feature of this story is when we study how Bharata Maharaj convinced himself. This is amazing. How he convinced himself that his degradation is actually elevation. He was degrading, he was preparing the grounds for him to accept a animal body in the next life. This is what was actually happening. But he managed to convince himself that his degradation is actually advancement. He thought, I'm advancing in Krishna consciousness. Actually, I'm upgrading my consciousness. Now I'm a better person than before I met this deer. While all the way was the real situation was just the opposite. He was degrading himself. Well, it's very fascinating because, okay, I'll explain why a little later. But I'll quote a little from Bharata Maharaja's own words. Alas, this helpless young deer, by the force of time, an agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the time is an agent, has now lost its relatives and friends and has taken shelter of me. It does not know anyone but me, as I have become its father, mother, brother, and relative. This deer is thinking in this way, and it has full faith in me. It does not know anyone but me. Therefore, I should not be envious and think that for the deer, my own welfare will be destroyed. I should certainly raise, protect, gratify, and fondle it. When it has taken shelter with me, how can I neglect it? Even though the deer is disturbing my spiritual life, I realized here, he realizes that he thinks that now he is advancing. I realize that a helpless person who has taken shelter cannot be neglected. That will be a great fault. Even though one is in the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important to protect one who has surrendered. So Maharaja Bharata, obviously he was aware, by his own words, that his growing affection for this deer was indeed disturbing his spiritual practice. However, this was not so important for him anymore. Why? Because he thought that now he had discovered something greater. This absolute, all-encompassing, uncompromising, universal love for all creatures. That's what he thought. I should not be selfish, concentrating on my own spiritual practice. Instead, I will just reject my own personal self-interest and I will surrender to this deer. That's what he thought. Sounds kind of Okay, right? In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna decided that he doesn't want to fight, also, he sounded very noble. The motivation was compassion, why we should kill all these soldiers on the opposite army. Also, our soldiers will suffer. Well, let them enjoy this piece of land, and I'll go in the forest. It sounded very plausible. Krishna didn't like it, though. So, why is this important for us? Because probably we're doing the same thing right now. The thing that Bharata Maharaj was doing, he was misunderstanding his degradation for a advancement. Probably we're doing the same thing right now with our own spiritual practice, or maybe some other area of life. Probably. So this was the homework that I was thinking to give you. And it's homework for me and for all of us if we try to be introspective. Try to identify area in your spiritual practice where you think that you are advancing, but actually you are maybe not advancing. Maybe just the opposite thing is going on. Can be in your chanting. How do you chant the holy name? Or how do you do other things, do other spiritual activities? Anyway, that's something for... Anyway, do you have any... Yes.
I'm not sure I'm clear what's bad about helping others.
Yeah.
I thought that was the whole idea of spiritual practice.
Exactly.
And help others.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be the right solution for this guy to let this baby deer die?
Not necessarily.
Better.
Yes, this is the whole thing that we want to help others. In the airplanes when they give the safety instructions in the beginning, they say that in a case of emergency, if the masks fall down, first thing you do, you make sure that you have your own mask. And then you help others. Why? Because while helping others, if you don't have your own mask, you may lose consciousness, and then you are in trouble, and then the other person that you try to help is in trouble also. So first you save yourself, so to say, and then you can save others. So we're saving ourselves by Krishna consciousness, by being in spiritual understanding, spiritual level. And then when we are solidly engaged and established in Krishna consciousness, we can try to save and to help others in a proper way. Otherwise, we are trying to help, and this is very nice sentiment, but we don't know, we're not qualified to help. We don't really know how to help. He could have saved this deer and take care of him and let him go, for example. Or he might have done something else, but what he actually did was that Bharata Maharaj sacrificed his own spiritual practice, and as a result he developed intense attachment to this deer. A little later, the deer didn't appear at one point, and he became very disturbed that some tiger or some predator has eaten him. So he became mad, literally. Bharata Maharaj became crazy. The way he started talking revealed his derangement, mental disturbance. He was very troubled in mind. So he became so absorbed in this animal that at the moment of death, he thought about this animal, and then the next life he became a deer. So that's another very important lesson, is that we may feel in different ways, and we may decide to follow our heart as he decided. And we may have very nice arguments, just like Arjuna had very lofty arguments in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. And what did Krishna think about these arguments? He told him that he's a fool, indirectly. but the outcome of our arguments and our decisions will be decided by higher authority. And we may think it's not fair, but this will not change the outcome, because it's not our prerogative, it's not our authority to decide what the outcome will be. It is already decided. Therefore, Bhagavatam says, karma na daiva natrina, and another famous verse, dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Dharma or religion is already established by Krishna. We cannot change it. So what happened when, so Bharata Maharaj became a deer, and then by the mercy of Krishna he remembered everything from his past life. Usually it doesn't happen, but he had special mercy from Krishna. So he remembered what happened, and then finally the reality hit him hard. He finally understood what has happened, what happened to him. And then let's see what he thought about it. What misfortune! I have fallen from the path of the self-realization. I gave up my real sons, wife and home to advance in spiritual life. And I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest. This is what he's thinking as a deer now. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshipping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. So now he understands. So many arguments, so many justification. He thought that he's advancing, but now he understands what actually happened to him. And just imagine, he left his own wife, children, kingdom. If I tell you the analogy given in Bhagavatam, how he left them, maybe I should not tell them. I should not tell the analogy. It's very heavy. He was completely detached from them, from the dearest and beloved people in his life, and then only to become attached to an animal.
From a huge, kingdom.
Huge kingdom, unrivaled kingdom, nicely maintained. He was not just king; he was the emperor, not just king. He was not ordinary king, emperor of the whole planet. Only to become attached to an animal and then become an animal in the next life. From the level of bhava, he fell down. He was shocked. And yes?
Yeah, in this regard, I was thinking, the problem is not that we have compassion
Yeah.
in our heart. Problem is how you are giving compassion to someone if you are not in the position to give compassion. Like in this case, one compassion is, let's say you, for example, you want to help some homeless person and give him a shelter. You should have a shelter. If you don't have a house, how are you going to give him a shelter?
Yeah, you're just like him,
Yeah.
homeless.
You want to buy someone to eat something. Well, first you should have the money in order to buy him something.
Yeah.
So, in case we want to help, because we can help in two ways, people. One is material way, and we can help like animal. We can help him materially, give him something to eat, give him some shelter place. But then, can you do something more for this animal? And if the answer is yes, I want to help this animal spiritually, well then you should have what you want to give him. If you don't have it, how you're going to give?
So if you sacrifice your spiritual wealth,
The problem in Bharat Maharaj is
he
that
sacrificed his Krishna consciousness.
he wanted to help the deer both materially and spiritually, but actually he very subtly decreased his spiritual position. So how you are going to help someone spiritually if you are not spiritually on a high position. That was actually
That was the problem.
the problem. Otherwise, if it were just helping materially, no problem. He could easily help the deer materially. But he wanted to help her spiritually, but actually he became so much absorbed in this relationship that actually he neglected his spiritual practice. And this is the certain point. If you want to be qualified and able to help others spiritually, you should have a certain spiritual level. Otherwise, you may think you are helping them. You may actually convincing yourself you are helping them. You can cheating yourself you are helping them. But actually you are not, because you don't have anything to give.
Mm.
You are poor like them, and you're thinking, oh, I'm rich, I can give. No, you don't have.
Nice point.
Is it, so it's not exactly the problem that it's an animal. It could be, even if it was a person, he would be doing the wrong thing because he was getting attached and he was lowering spirit.
Yes, but if it was a person, human being, then at least he could have hope that he can elevate his consciousness to Krishna consciousness.
Mm.
And then, like the case of Haridas Thakur and the prostitute. Prostitute came and tried to seduce Haridas Thakur, the great devotee, and he just told her, wait, I want to finish my rounds. And she stayed there, just listening how he chants the whole night. And this happened 3 nights, one after another. And then at the end of the 3rd night, she became devotee. She became great devotee. But the deer will not become a great devotee. That's the problem. It's a dead end from the very beginning.
It was a dead end, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if it was a human, he might have.
He might have ended up the same way, like becoming.
Right, either way, 'cause
But at least there is a chance
the
that
deer, there's no hope.
no. That's the
Okay.
thing. Therefore, we say sentimental. It comes from speculation of the mind.
Mm.
It's not based on reality, actually. And then what actually happened? Bharata Maharaj could not protect this deer, actually. He just died, and he saw in the moment of death the deer was standing next to him, lamenting, just like a son would lament for the father, but he couldn't do anything. And then the deer was left alone. So he couldn't actually, although he tried his best, he could not protect the deer, even materially. Then he lost both his spiritual practice and he could not protect the deer. That's what happens. Just like the story of the Brahmana who was very hungry, and he was in some village where there were only very low-class persons living. Then you're not supposed to, the Brahman is not supposed to eat food from these people because he'll be contaminated. But he was so hungry he couldn't control his senses, and he asked one of these low-class people, please give me some food. And then the guy said, yes, okay, but I have only some rice left. And Brahma said, doesn't matter, give me whatever, I'm so hungry, I'm starving. And then he gave him some rice, and then the Brahman ate. And he was not satisfied. And he said, I lost my caste. That means now he became contaminated. He's not anymore a Brahmana because he became contaminated. And I'm still hungry. So I couldn't get anything. Couldn't satisfy my hunger. And so something similar happened to Bharata Maharaj. He lost his spiritual wealth, and also, not fully, because we'll see, the story has happy end. And he could not protect the deer either. So that's what happens when we speculate. So similarly, we see in Bhagavatam, there is another funny, no, it's not funny, it's kind of tragic story, about another great sage, Saubhari Muni, who was meditating at the bottom of a river just to avoid bad company. He was living underwater and meditating. And what happened to him? He committed some offense. As a result, he saw 2 fishes having sex, and he became so disturbed that he came out of the river and went and married 50 princesses, daughters of king. And then, after spending many years in sense enjoyment, finally he realized what just transpired. And then he said, alas, while practicing austerity, even within the depths of the water, and while observing all the rules and regulations practiced by saintly persons, I lost the results of my long austerity simply by association with the sexual affairs of fish. And then he says, everyone should observe this fall down and learn from it. This is like very ominous. Everybody should observe and learn from it. So that's what we're doing. We're observing and trying to learn so that we don't have to go through this. All right? And then what did Bharata Maharaj do now in the body of a deer? He left his mother, the deer mother, and then he went back to the place where he performed tapasya as a human, and he stayed there. And he ate only dry grass, dry leaves, and so he just basically just waited for this body to come to an end. That's what he did. Nothing special. Bhagavatam doesn't describe some special adventures in this body. So the next, while he was leaving this body of a deer, he prayed to the Lord. He remembered the Lord all the way through. And then the next life, he was born in a very pure Brahmana family as a Brahmana. And he was known as Jada Bharata. But this lifetime, he decided that no nonsense anymore. I'm not going to make any compromise. This lifetime, I'll be very, very super careful. And so he was so radical, determined, that he pretended to be a dumb, basically idiot. His father tried to educate him in Vedic culture. He would teach him, when you go to the toilet, you have to wash your hands after. Jada Bharata would wash his hands before going to the toilet, just to show that he cannot learn. He wanted to pretend that he's just very stupid person, like an animal. Why? Because he was afraid that if he become part of the social structure of society, he will again become a victim of bad association. So therefore he decided that this lifetime I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'll just silently meditate on my Lord in my heart. I don't accept this is my father. No. This life I'm not going to play this game. This is not my family. I don't have anything to do with these people. He had twin sisters. Father, mother, he just completely discarded all of his family. And then, his brothers, they took advantage of him. They were employing him to do a very heavy job, and they'll give him just broken rice, rotten rice to eat, and he would take this as a nectar. He would not protest. He would just, whatever happens this lifetime, I'm just waiting for the time when Krishna decides that this life is over and I'm going back home to Godhead. No compromises. Then he was caught by some dacoits who they were looking around for a human being who is similar to an animal, because in their speculation they thought that if they sacrifice this human being in front of the goddess Kali, then they'll get great boon from the goddess. So they found Jada Bharata while he was guarding the crops at night. They saw him, and they thought, well, this is exactly what we're looking for. This guy is idiot, so we're going to sacrifice him. So they caught him. He didn't protest. He was very strongly built, by the way. Strong, beautiful, everything. He had all the prerequisites for a nice life. They caught him. He didn't protest. They brought him in front of the deity. They fed him sumptuously. Then they dressed him in very nice clothes. They brought him in front of the deity. He knew what's going on. He was not stupid. He knew. He didn't say a word. He was just, okay, if this is the end of this body, I'm ready. Then the leader of the dacoits, he took a sword and he chanted a special mantra. And he was just about to kill Jada Bharata. when the deity of Durga Devi, she just couldn't tolerate this. She saw that these rascals, they're going to kill a pure devotee of the Lord. They're shameless, and they're actually going for it. They're not going to stop. This is not a joke. So when she saw that, she became so furious. She jumped out of the deity. She burst out of the deity, of her own deity, and with a team of female demonesses and witches, she very quickly cut the heads of all these rogues and dacoits, and they started drinking blood from their bodies, and they're playing with their heads like football. They were singing songs. They became intoxicated. And Jalabarata just left. And like this, he was. Then he had an encounter with a king, Arhugana. That's another story. But anyway, in the end, there was a happy end. He attained the spiritual world. So this is the first story. You have some questions on this story?
I have a question.
Yes.
You were saying something about suffering, and
Mm.
it was something super cool, and I want you to repeat that, please, because it's just deeper than I could understand from the first try. You were talking about how suffering can only be relieved by helping a person to achieve spiritual life,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But what about physical suffering?
Yes, physical suffering. We are not against relieving the physical pain of people. This is okay. But our point is that it is not the ultimate solution, because by giving somebody medicine or feeding him if he's hungry, etc., giving him clothes, this will temporarily relieve his suffering. But this is very ephemeral, very temporary. Because why is this person suffering? On the first case, because he's in ignorance. He has transgressed the laws of God. That's why he's getting now a reaction. The best way to help him is to teach him that there are laws and he should not transgress them. In other words, the best way to help him is to give him spiritual knowledge. And then he by himself, he will stop performing sinful activities, and then the suffering will go away. It may take some time because there is some inertia, but when the Prabhupada gives the example of the ventilator, if the fan is moving, if you switch it off, then it will take some time, but it will be slower and slower and slower, and then it will stop. So that's what we try to do. But we're not against alleviating the physical pain, but it's not the ultimate solution. That's what we're saying. Is this okay? So you have strength for the next story, or we should stop with the first story? The next story will be shorter. Okay. So here in this first story, we had a downfall, and then we had a redemption. There was a happy end. This next story is the same. So we have a Jamila. He was a young Brahmana boy who got very nice training. And he was very good devotee. He was very respectful. He had all the good qualities. One day, though, while going in the forest, he saw a prostitute and a Shudra man, and they were engaging in illicit, lustful affairs. So he saw that. And he could not take this out of his mind. He tried to control his mind according to all the rules that he learned from his guru. He tried to purify himself, but he just couldn't. Bhagavatam explains how his intelligence was pierced by the lustful glance of this prostitute. That's what happens. So we should be very aware of the... It doesn't mean that we should just isolate ourselves and don't see people. But at the same time, we should be aware how these things are happening. So this lustful glance, so We have to be careful. It pierces the intelligence. Intelligence means that we know what is to be done and what is not to be done. So, for example, now we know that we should eat only vegetarian food offered to Krishna. We shouldn't eat meat or this intelligence. But when the intelligence is pierced, then we may lose this determination. So we should carefully guard our intelligence, our mind, our subtle body. So then what happened? Jamila, he very quickly, he tried to overcome this attraction, but he couldn't. So very quickly he took this prostitute, he employed her in his house as a maidservant, and then he gradually became intimate with her. And then he left his own beautiful wife, which was coming from very high aristocratic Brahmana family, and he married this prostitute. And
That was the end.
so I want to read something that Prabhupada said regarding this. This verse, okay. So after engaging in this illicit sex with this prostitute, a series of calamities befell him. Okay, he abandoned his beautiful young wife, who came from a highly esteemed Brahmana family. Because, why? Because he could not bring her to participate in those animalistic activities he craved after witnessing the lustful interactions of the prostitute. And Srila Prabhupada points out, this verse indicates how degraded one becomes simply by indulging in illicit sex with a prostitute. Illicit sex is not possible with a chaste or aristocratic woman, but only with unchaste Shudras. The more the society allows prostitution and illicit sex, the more impetus it gives to cheaters, thieves, plunderers, drunkards, and gamblers. If illicit sex is allowed to increase in a society, however, the entire society will be condemned, for it will be full of rogues, thieves, cheaters, and so forth. So that's why he left his wife, because you cannot engage in these activities with the aristocratic woman. Not only his wife, he left his parents, and they were old, and there was no one to take care of them. So they suffered greatly in their old age alone. Well, he left them, and he completely dedicated his life to this prostitute, and he had many children with her, and he, in order to maintain this prostitute and her children, he became himself a rogue, a criminal. He kidnapped people. He was plundering people. He was committing all kinds of sinful activities. So from a Brahmana, he became a very degraded dacoit. And not only that, but he had. So when he was 88 years old, so he was a young person when he fell down. He was a young boy. He had a young, beautiful wife. So he became 88 years old, and then he had a son, another child from this prostitute. So that means he had continued to have sex until he was 88 years old. And this is normally, Shastra says that this is done up to 50 years. And then after one becomes 50, then one should take to Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means one should gradually decrease the material activities and increase the spiritual activities. Because death is approaching, and Prabhupada said, you need at least 20 good years of before death comes, where you are completely dedicated to Krishna consciousness. Then you have some chance at the moment of death to remember Krishna. But Ajamila didn't follow that. So then he had this last child. But Krishna was so merciful. He's so merciful that he, from inside his heart, inspired Ajamila to name this child Narayana. Narayana is one of the names of Krishna. And why? Because in his youth, Ajamila used to worship Shalgaram Shiva, Narayana Shiva. So Krishna inspired him, and then naturally this small Narayana, he was the favorite child of his father. So he would call the name of his child all the time. Narayana, Narayana, but he didn't mean the Lord, but he meant his son. Nonetheless, the Acharyas explain that the very first time when he chanted Narayana, all his sinful reactions were gone. And when he continued to chant the holy name of the Lord, although he meant his son, he started to develop unconsciously, unknowingly, he started to develop bhakti again. This is the mercy of Krishna. So when the time came for Ajamil to leave his body, he was an old man, then who came? The Yamadutas came, the messengers of Yamaraj, and they were ready to take Jamila to hell because he was very sinful. But then when he saw these terrible persons, the Yamadutas, he became very afraid, and he called out his son for help. In a completely helpless state of mind. He was completely helpless, and he very sincerely, obviously because he was very scared, he called Narayana, Narayana, and then the Vishnudutas appeared. The Vishnudutas are the messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Lord. And they forbade Yamadutas to take Ajamila to hell. And Yamadutas were very shocked. They were really surprised. This never happened in their career. Nobody ever obstructs the messengers of the god of death. This is unheard. Therefore, they thought they're the most powerful. And they thought that Yamaraj is the Supreme Lord. So they saw the Vishnudutas, and they appreciated that they are very special. They are shining, and they have resounding voices, and they're very beautiful and very strong. And they therefore they couldn't understand, why are you, sirs, obstructing our service? You're supposed to help us. Why are you obstructing us? And then the Vishnudutas told them, this person, Ajamila, he is not under your jurisdiction. He, at the moment of death, with a helpless attitude, he chanted the holy name of the Lord. He chanted these 4 syllables, Narayana. Therefore, he is not yours. You cannot touch him. And the Yamadutas were even more, they were now enraged. And they thought there must be some mistake. And they pleaded, look, this guy is very sinful. He committed this and this and this and this sin. And there was no atonement. He didn't atone for his sins. This is the Vedic procedure. If you commit a sin, then you may commit some atonement, perform prayachita is called. And then you absolved of the sin. He didn't do it. So the sins are standing. And he has to be, and he didn't even mean the name of the Lord. He was calling his son. This is ridiculous. He should be taken to hell. And the Vishnudutas told them, basically there was a long conversation actually between them. But in essence, making the long story short, the Vishnudutas told them, yes, you think like this because you're materialists. And why are they materialists? Because they didn't understand that it doesn't matter how, to whom actually in his mind Ajamil was calling. He chanted the holy name of Krishna, and then that meant he got relieved from all sinful reactions that he committed in the past or he will commit in the future. Because he didn't chant the holy name in offensive state. In other words, he didn't consciously perform sinful activities and then he thought, now I'm going to chant Hare Krishna or Narayana, and then all these sinful reactions will be gone. He didn't think like this. He was just helpless and scared, and he called out the name of his son, which happened to be the name of the Lord. So that this was completely enough. And the Vishnudutas told the Yamadutas, he's not yours. The end of discussion. Go home. So they went back to Yamaraj and they complained to him. They were like, we thought that you're the supreme, but now... And then Yamaraj had to educate them. No, actually, I'm not the supreme. Lord Vishnu is the supreme. Krishna is the supreme, and he warned them, don't ever go close to the devotees of the Lord, because this will be trouble for you and problem for me. When you, bring me only people who never chanted the holy name, who never wear kantimala, who never put tilak. Only these people bring. Don't, and therefore, Yamadutas don't approach the devotees even in dreams. Devotees never see Yamadutas. And then what happened? Jamila, well, by now we should be familiar what happened. Jamila saw for the first time, just like Bharata Maharaj, his situation. Okay. Anyway, he saw the first time his situation what is the real situation. He saw Allah, and he said the same thing basically. Alas, what have I done? I gave up my own beautiful wife, and I gave up my parents, and I engaged in this illicit relationship with this prostitute. I'm so degraded. So finally he saw his wife as a fallen prostitute. He didn't see anymore. And even Narayana, the small boy, he was not anymore enough. Even Narayana was not invoking any more material attachment. So he immediately left home. He took radical steps, just like Jadabharata. He left home because I mean, you can imagine. You just saw the Yamadutas. They almost dragged you to hell, and then you saw these wonderful personalities that they saved you. And then now there was no doubt anymore in his mind what he has to do. He left home, he went to Haridwar, to the holy places. There he fully engaged in devotional service, just like Jadabharata. And then when he was ready, the same Vishnudutas came, and they took him back to Vaikuntha. Not different, the same. So they already had some relationship. Yeah, so these were the two stories, and what can we learn? I wrote a few things here. Okay, from Bharata Maharaj's example, we can learn that we are not above Maya's influence, even if we are on the level of bhava. So we should be afraid of Maya. Actually, Srila Prabhupada said that this is the difference between me and my disciples. They are not afraid of Maya, and I'm afraid of Maya. So we should be always afraid of Maya. Prabhupada said, now that I have so many temples, so much money, so much disciples, now I always pray to Krishna not to fall down. I always pray not to fall down. So we should, if Prabhupada was praying not to fall down, I mean, we should be constantly praying not to fall down, because Maya is very strong. So, what else? Another thing we should learn from this story of Bharata Maharaj is that even if we have given up everything, entire kingdom, great opulence, beautiful life, etc., this doesn't mean that we cannot become attached to something quite insignificant. For example, a small smartphone. This may be our fall down smartphone, although we have given up everything. Another lesson is from Bharata Maharaj's story is that he was alone. He was practicing spiritual life alone. There were no other sages around him to correct him. If he had friends around him, advanced devotees, then this whole problem with the deer, because they would have seen this deer and they would have understand what's going on, this would have been solved for 5 minutes conversation with one of his buddies there. He'd be like, hey man, you in Maya, what are you doing? You're getting attached to this deer, you'll become an animal in next life, and then Bharata Maharaj will be rectified. He didn't have this. So therefore we should always be surrounded by devotees, I mean, ideally. And the best, well, I don't know the best, but for sure we should have, because you have these senior devotees, very senior devotees, and you have junior devotees. And we need both of these. But we very much need peers, devotees who are equal, friends, because they will not hesitate to tell us when we are in Maya. They'll just come and they'll be straightforward, and they'll go straight to the point. They'll tell us, you're nonsense, you're a rascal. Stop doing this. Get your act together. So we need this association. Okay. And at one point, just like Bharata Maharaj and Jada Bharata, we should just become very serious about Krishna consciousness. No more nonsense, no more compromises, no more postponing. Okay, later on when I become old, now it's the time. Now or never. Bharata Maharaj, Jada Bharata, and Jamila, they did exactly this. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Some lessons from Ajamila story.
Yes. One lesson is that Krishna is very merciful, and he always looks for excuse to give us mercy. Like, this was really, I don't know what will be Ajamila's fate if we were the judges. I mean, imagine, let's be honest here. This guy, he left his wife, he left his parents, nobody took care of them, they were suffering at their old age. And now, he committed so much crime and sinful activities. When he was 88, the whole life he was sinful, basically. And now at the end of life, he somehow, or rather he named his son Narayana. And when the messengers of hell came, he called out his son. He didn't call the Lord. And because of this now, he just said Narayana. Because of this now, all his sins are removed. Is this fair?
It's not fair.
Okay. Well, that's what...
It's not fair. It means that I can live my whole sinful life and then I'm on a deathbed and all I need to do is say Hare Krishna and I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
Right?
If it's chanted without offense. If it's not offensive. Because if you did this with this idea, then this will not happen. Then you will still be...
So it only needs to be sincere, right?
Without offense. Because there are 3 levels of chanting. Offensive chanting, the medium level is called Namabhas, that means the shadow of the holy name, and then there is the pure name. So Namabhas chanting, the medium clearing stage, is enough to remove all possible sinful reactions in this life, in countless life, in the past, in the future. So this is...
What's the offensive one?
Offensive is that when we chant and our chanting is infested with offenses against the holy name. The first offense is to blaspheme the devotees of the Lord who propagate the holy name. The second offense, there are 10 offenses. So if our chanting is, we chant but we also commit these offenses, then this is offensive chanting. So the medium, we don't commit, we are consciously trying to overcome these offenses, sincerely. If we don't commit offenses, then this is liberation. So, yeah, but pay attention, Jamila didn't go back home to Godhead when the Vishnudutta saved him. He still had to perfect his sadhana. So he was just saved from hell. Then on his own, he went to Haridwar, to the holy place, and then he became very serious devotee, and then he attained these high levels of bhakti. And then he went back home to back. So one lesson is that Krishna is very merciful, and he is really looking for excuse, any excuse that we give him to give mercy. And the materialist people are the opposite. They look for any excuse not to give mercy, to withhold mercy when even mercy is due. So this is the difference between Krishna and us. So yeah, and we should take full advantage of this mercy, and we should be very serious about chanting the holy name. This is I think the main lesson from a Jamila story. This is our saving grace.
I'm also thinking one important lesson from the second pastime is that somehow on our level of spirituality, we kind of put the bad sinful activities and good spiritual activities are on the same level.
Mm.
Like if you do bad sinful activity, okay, you go like whatever 1 meter down, and if you do good spiritual activity, you go 1 meter up. So basically, we kind of have this idea that okay, these
Yeah.
are more or less on the same level, just you
Yeah.
go opposite direction. But then when you see how Krishna is taking this, like what's the vision of Krishna in this situation, well, it doesn't look like that, because you have apparently tons of bad activities on one side,
Mountains.
because okay, here we are speaking about one person who did wrong things in one life, but actually in the scriptures it is explained that one chanting of the holy name is enough to destroy all the bad things you thought, you said, and you did, not in this life but in countless lifetimes. So you have like mountain, I don't know, like
Universe of sin.
Himalaya mountain of bad stuff going on in this life and so many previous lifetimes. And then on the other side, like our material logic says, okay, that means now we have to do a mountain of spiritual activities so that you counteract this. But in the vision of Krishna is this huge mountain of bad stuff, and then you have na, ra, ya, na, or you have
Done.
Krishna, or even Ram. And this is enough to free you from all this. Like, what's the logic? How does it work? I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Well, this was the logic of the Yamadutas.
Yes,
That's what they.
that's the point.
Yeah.
How it is possible he did so many bad things,
And it's not fair.
Okay, he did one good thing, but it's one. Like, it's not possible this small one good thing to
Wait.
counteract all these bad things.
Okay, what about his parents and his wife? Don't they deserve to see the wrongdoer put to justice? That's another thing. Retribution. You know, justice has to be served. This guy has to go and suffer. This is the material thinking. So that's why my question I'm posing in this short essay I wrote: on which side we'll decide to stand when if we witness the dispute between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas? Where do we actually stand? Of course, we know we have to stand with the Vishnudutas because this is Krishna, this is our worshipable Lord. But actually, in our heart, do we actually stand there genuinely, or we would rather we want a Jamila to go to suffer, to hell, and then when he's purified, he's humiliated, he's punished, then maybe in 1 million years he will be purified. But he has to suffer.
You give him a chance.
Yeah, but
Well, honestly speaking, some points will be on one side, some points will be on the other side. It goes a little bit.
But at least we should know that this is material thinking. And what you're explaining, this is the transcendental vision. So if we develop this Yamaduta concept, we will stay in the material world. Because this is not the spiritual vision of the Lord. And Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada defines in 4th canto, Prabhupada defines Krishna consciousness to see the universe in the way Krishna sees the universe. This is Krishna consciousness. And if we want to see it in the material way, we'll stay here. And we may end up as Yamadutas, you never know. If we're so much enthusiastic to give justice, retribution, to punish wrongdoers, yeah, well, this is perfect job for you. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.